We're live. Let me just double check that we're live.
Are we live?
Are we live? Yep. Looks like.
Holy shit.
Holy shit bangs. We're live.
Episode 3. And there were about 2 people that listened to us last week.
Thank you for that. We greatly appreciate the effort.
Absolutely. And again, this is sponsored by Mum.
Thanks, Mum.
She has supplied us with fairy bread for lunch. The hundreds and thousands little coating.
We should totally do that next week.
Shit, yeah, that's what's on for next week's lunch. I mean, you're going out for Japanese tonight.
We are going Jap tonight.
I'm not doing the Japanese, but I tell you what, I could go for a plate of fairy bread.
Fairy bread, yeah.
Because back in the 80s, that was the shit.
Hundreds and thousands, bit of butter and some bread, mate. That's a cheap lunch for all ages.
That's it. So if you don't know what this is, this was a podcast between me and my brother. We look at little things that happened back in the 80s and the 90s with gaming and lots of different things. That is my phone that'll go off randomly. And you know what? Fuck it, let it do it.
I agree, let it do it.
That's it.
Your ringtone's more amusing than mine. So
I'm Retro Dan. This is my brother, Jason Relaxation. We're going to talk to you about lots of different things. You can see he's been relaxing quite a bit. Absolutely. As we both have. And this is episode 3 of the Invert the Why Podcast. If you did happen to listen to us last week, thank you very much for your patronage. We do appreciate it.
Subscribe.
Well, you know what? I wouldn't subscribe to this shit. Because we did a pretty bare bones job last week.
This week's is probably even more bare bones.
Even loose. Yeah. Now, don't worry. We do have an episode coming up with Pottery Pete.
Pottery Pete's going to be a fantastic episode.
He is becoming a national treasure. Because I had quite a few people saying, yeah, you need some work on your podcast, but good on you for getting it out there. But I'll tell you what, Kim, we have some more discussion about pottery. So, what am I? Who am I, man? What do I know?
What the customers they want it, we have to supply it.
Exactly right. I don't know anything about pottery, but he will be coming in for another episode in the near future. So look out for that. This is episode number 3 of the Invert the Why Podcast, and we're going to just randomly talk today about. Well, I think one of the things is the 90s.
The 90s.
I want to talk about the 90s a little bit today.
I think lots of people want to hear us talk about the 90s, Daniel.
But we're going to start every episode up with a random access memory from the vault deep inside this very disturbed mind that I carry in my little cranium.
It's a random access memory, a RAM?
It's a RAM. It's a Daniel's RAM. So we're going to go back all the way into some deep, dark recesses of my mind and go back into shit that happened. Are we ready for the RAM?
I'm ready for the RAM. I'm always ready for a good RAM.
Oh, aren't we all? And after the pottery last week with tubes and pipes and things going through tubes and that, there was a lot of ramage.
With Pottery Pete.
With Pottery Pete. So, let's start it off, as we always will, with a Daniel Ram story.
Bring it on.
Do we need to do the timing thing for the fucking jingle?
No, I'll figure that shit out later.
You'll figure it out?
I'll figure that shit out later.
Now listen, this is the other thing from last week I noticed, and I'm guilty of it, the potty mouth. Not the pottery mouth.
Sorry, Mum. We sound like we grew up in Mount...
We do. Listen, this is the other thing too. We are now on Spotify. We are now on...
iTunes.
YouTube. And we do load this junk friggin' podcast up to YouTube. So if you want to look at our beautiful faces...
I recommend you don't do that.
Don't do it. Don't look at YouTube. Ignore YouTube completely. Just go to Spotify or iTunes. All the cool kids do that these days. But I did notice there was a lot of F-bombs in the previous podcast.
It did so happen to show up as the second keyword. So I actually ran the podcast through an Azure service, which is basically for transcoding. Basically for... looking at the transcript that we came up with as we were speaking, and it highlights keywords. And the second keyword that it discovered automatically was the word fuck, followed by fucking. So we seem to have a bit of a potty mouth, but that's okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe people vote in as to whether or not they want us to go on with that potty mouth. I can't help it. I get animated. I get angry at stuff, and it just comes out.
Things like Bethesda make me sad.
I'm going to try really hard this week, man. I'm going to refrain, but I bet I'll last like 5 seconds, and I'm just into it again. I bet I just forget, and I'm into it again. I can't help myself. But anyway, let's get into a random access memory This week sponsored by my deteriorating brain. I want to go all the way back because this is a very new podcast, Jason Relaxation. I want to go all the way back to 1979.
Wow, it's before my time.
You weren't even born then.
I wasn't even born.
And this is not even a Smashing Pumpkins song.
Wow.
I want to go back to the very first thing that I remember. Now, I remember... See, I was 4 years old, so do the math as to how fucking old I am. There's your first F-bomb. Go all the way back. I was 4. So I'm done. I'm finished. In 2019, it's over for me. But the first thing, I remember 1979 as being the first year that things happened. And the very first things, but one particular thing that happened that blew my mind out of my socket, happened in 1979. And I want to go through it a little bit, so bear with me. Now, this will also tie into another segment I want to bring onto the podcast, which is dad stories.
Oh, okay.
Because we got a few.
Oh, we got a few of those.
We got a few, but this is going to tie in nicely with that, right?
Yep. All
okay.
right.
So in 1979, I was 4 years old. We lived in a different part of town to where we live, where Mum and Dad live now. And by the way, this is not Mum's basement. This is her garage.
It's basically mine.
Well, why not? It could be.
It could be.
Right. But back then, they moved in 1980. Before you were born.
Yep.
And so 1979 was the last year that we lived in this particular part of town. It was a very suburban part of town. It was a very, established area. And it just so happened there were a lot of kids my age that were kind of growing up in that area around that sort of time. And so it was very, very common to wake up in the morning and a couple of things would happen. The very first thing that I remember happened, I remember this now as I'm thinking about it. I would get up in the morning. I think it was on Saturdays back in 1979, but there was a show I loved that it was called Space 1999.
Space
1999. Google the shit out of that.
Space 1999.
This was an amazing show. Now, it actually originally aired in 1976, but I was obviously too young for that. So 76 it aired.
There we go.
It only had 2 seasons, and it never came back in any way, shape, or form. Long story short, they put all the Earth's toxic shit on the dark side of the moon, and they established a base. But something went wrong on the moon, and the moon got blown out of orbit from the Earth and was hurtling into space. And I think the space station was Alpha 1 or something. I want to say it was Alpha... Knocking the moon out of orbit and sending it as well as 311 inhabitants. 311, also a very good band, by the way.
Very good band, yeah.
And so this was...
Moonbase Alpha, there you go.
Moonbase Alpha, okay. So it was based on this Moonbase Alpha. This show blew my mind because it had these ships called Eagle Landers. Now, I can remember I actually had an Eagle Lander as a kid. Now, I'm not going to blame you for burning it because you didn't even get it. It didn't even make... It didn't make the move to the new house.
Yeah, so I didn't have the opportunity.
No, you could have burnt the shit out of it, but you didn't.
I would have loved to have.
You could have, right? And this show was frigging amazing. The first season was pretty bare bones and dry, but the second season was cool because it had like this. Her name was Maya. I thought it was originally Maya. It might actually be Maya. It might have been pronounced Maya, but it's spelt Maya, M-A-Y-A.
Yep.
And she was a transforming alien.
Cool.
And she was hot.
Fair call.
Right. So 4 years old, probably wearing my nappies. I appreciated what Maya was doing. Right. You can probably call up the images if you go to the images on the Wikipedia.
Yep.
Just so I'm not pulling
I
complete shit out of my ass.
Yeah, fair enough. So I'll look for Maya.
Yeah, Maya.
Typically it's pronounced Maya.
That's her. Okay. She had these weird eyebrows and she had these 70s sideburns, but she was a transforming alien.
Okay.
They actually made a bloody doll out of her.
Fuck, you need to get on eBay, mate.
Oh, well, that might be a very valuable collectible.
I reckon.
And I'm into my collectibles. But she was a transforming alien, or she had some kind of powers. And I remember this vividly, waking up on a Saturday morning, watching this on probably a 26-inch Sony Trinitron CRT TV, back in 1979. It blew my friggin' mind. This was unbelievable, right? And she could transform into that thing, that bug-eye
creepy
creature.
ass motherfucker.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to mess with her because she was pretty bad. But she had these weird eyebrows and all that sort of stuff. But she wore that pretty cool. Look at those boots.
That's some unreal boots, man. They'd be trendy now.
Oh shit, yeah, she was ahead of her time. 1979.
Well,
I mean, so 2 seasons. I think it originally aired in 76. Maybe the second season was 77. They made a friggin' Maya doll.
yeah.
I'm going to eBay the shit out of that.
You should eBay the shit out
I'm
of that.
going to try and find out how much that is. But I used to get up and watch this show, and I loved it. And there was a thing called... See if you can find an image of the Eagle Lander. Because
Eagle
yeah,
Lander?
it was called the... I'm sure it was called the Eagle Lander. Eagle Transporter. That's it. The Eagle Transporter. And the Eagle Transporter was... That's it. It looked really unique. And I actually used to have a model of them, and you could actually buy them. I think they may have been made by Matchbox. I believe I could be wrong, but you could buy these things in either a model, and you could buy them as almost like a Matchbox type of car, and that's the Eagle Transporter.
It's a pretty shit hot.
Yeah, so that used to be kind of like the second
There you go.
Thunderbird.
There's your pre-assembled model
Okay,
kit.
so you could buy them.
You can still buy it.
Okay, there you go. I've actually seen them as late as like the 90s.
Yeah.
And early 2000s in model shops where you could buy them.
$300. Should you play?
No, I want to try and make myself cool, man. In these later stages of my life, I don't know if I can do it. But okay, so here's the thing. They used to have a bit like the Thunderbird number 2. They'd have like this bit in the middle of it, right? Okay, yeah. So this thing, there we go. That's how freaking cool we are. So remember how the Thunderbird number 2 used to have? It used to drop.
It does it.
Okay, that one does it.
That one does it.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, that used to do it too, but it used to do it on the show as well.
Okay, but
right?
this would have been before Thunderbirds.
Oh, this is after the Thunderbirds. Thunderbirds was like 60s, very late 60s.
So they ripped it off.
Again, Google that. I could be wrong.
Jeez, man.
But going back to this, right? That used to have like used to make a really loud as it used to land, and it used to take off, and it used to have jets coming out. Oh, it was fucking badass, motherfucking thing. That's fucking 3 F-bomb, 4 F-bombs. There you go, cop that. I can't control myself. I'm on a fucking roll. That's 5.
Woo.
Right? So that there was pretty badass, and I loved this show. And it was, as I didn't know this at the time, but it was very short-lived, and it was obviously on repeat. So here's the thing. I used to get up in the morning and I used to watch this show. I think it was on Saturdays, and I remember this very vividly on a very, very old, back then, Sony Trinitron color CRT TV. Now, there was a whole neighborhood there's a whole bunch of these kids in the neighborhood, and it was led by this kid called Gary the Asian.
Gary the Asian.
Gary the Asian. Now, in 1979...
That was perfectly appropriate back in...
Well, you could... Well, I'll put it to you. In 1979, I'd never seen an Asian before. I don't mean to be funny. I'm not trying to be funny, and I'm not trying to be racist.
Mate, to be honest, I think we had one Filipino in high school.
Well,
right?
When we went, we never went there now.
Yeah.
And things are very different now.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be funny. But he was much older than us. I think he was probably maybe nearly in his teens. And he had a younger brother who was a little bit older than me as well. His younger brother was probably about 6. And the older brother, I think there was 3 kids, and the older brother was Gary the Asian. That's what we used to call him. He used to call me Danny the Cracker.
The cracker.
Right? Because he goes, you always tell jokes. And I don't know what fucking jokes I was saying at the age of 4, but if it impressed him, he wasn't really destined for a career in comedy, I'm just saying. But he used to lead us kids in the neighbourhood, and he was kind of given the responsibility of us not getting into trouble.
Fair enough.
Right? And so here's the thing. All of us would get together. We used to live on a cul-de-sac, right? And it was his job to make sure we wouldn't get run over by a car. Not that there were many cars back then, but you didn't want to get run over by like a...
Child safety back in the late 70s and 80s where parents just said, off you go.
Well, no one gave a fuck.
No one gave a fuck.
But I'll go you one better, right? And this will blow your mind because you won't believe this. Back then, it was not uncommon that you'd end up at someone else's house for lunch or for dinner.
Yeah.
Right? So you'd walk to your friend's house.
We used to do that.
Right? Yeah, but it was more where we used to grow up in the old house. And you'd go to someone else's house for lunch, and their mother would ring our mum and go, oh, he's here for lunch or whatever. He wants to stay for dinner, and you'd be over there for dinner, right? And that was very, very common. And so there was always an older kid that was out making sure that you wouldn't get into shit and all that sort of stuff. And we didn't wander very far, really, but we were in the neighbourhood, and there was always someone around to make sure someone was making sure we were okay and not getting run over by a fucking, Mitsubishi Sigma.
Well, they're a death trap. Those
Dad used to have one. It was called the Whistler.
The Whistler, because it used to sound like it whistled as it went past.
Yeah, because the aerodynamics were so shit in it.
Yeah,
it used to, mate. You could probably Google it. They were called the Whistler.
The Whistler.
Yeah, because they used to have such poor aerodynamics. As they used to come down the road, you hear them whistle. I can't whistle for shit, but that's what they used to do. They were called the Whistler. He used to have, because no one will fucking shit on Mitsubishi, but they used to have a very old. It was a 1979 when he got his one. It was a yellow one, right? It was a 1979 Sigma. There you go. It's on the search string. And this was a yellow one. That's it. That's a gold one. But he used to have. That's it. But he used to have a yellow one.
There's a yellow one right
That's
there.
it. That's it. Right? The only thing I don't remember about that car is whether or not it had the hood ornament. I don't think it did.
Nah.
And actually,
That was for the high model.
Yeah, and I think they used to be known as Chryslers.
In the US.
No, here.
Okay.
And then Mitsubishi took their Chrysler. Yeah, I was on the thing. I didn't even see it. Then Mitsubishi got hold of the brand, or they bought Chrysler out, or something happened. I think Chrysler got bought out by Mitsubishi or something. Could be wrong. I haven't Googled that shit. But they were originally a Chrysler, and when he got it, it was known as a Chrysler Sigma. And then later on, he got another one in 1982, right? Because he used to get them every 3 years. He got another one in 1982, and it was this Mitsubishi Sigma.
Ah, okay.
Right, but that was his first one, and it was that colour. But that particular...
That's actually a fairly cool looking car.
No, it was fucking shit.
Oh, no, it's a pile of shit, but that colour looks pretty schmick for the day.
Well, it's very 70s. Here's the thing about in the 70s, I'm not being funny, you needed sunglasses to walk into people's fucking homes.
What colour was Mum's kitchen bench?
Bright green. And in the old house, that's in the new house. She had a chance to change her ways, but no, she went green. That's what 10 F-bombs, fuck it. 11. She had the bright green Laminex in the 80s when we moved to the new house, but in the old house it was bright orange.
Fuck.
Now this is going to blow your mind. This is where I'm leading to this story, this Ram story, right? So we used to have a group of kids that would look out for each other, and you'd end up in other people's homes. Now, I made very good friends with a kid exactly my age, and his house used to back on our house. Right, so it used to be like is that adjacent where that house is there? And
yeah, fucking close enough.
Right.
Yeah.
And we got in good with the family because Dad and his dad would build a ladder so we could go
climb over the top,
climb over the fence, right? And it wasn't like the new house where there was barbed wire. This was suburbia. It was like a proper wooden fence or something. And it just saved us walking around the street. Anyway, you go over there all the time. So I would wake up in the morning and I'd watch Space 1999 or some other such shit, but it was usually...
Mind you, shit didn't change for a long time because we were watching Robotech first thing in the morning.
Well, that's another story, Robotech. We won't go down that fucking rabbit hole because that's a big rabbit hole. You don't want to open that.
Min-me.
And well, that's in my uni years in the 90s. I was watching
That's
Robotech.
what I mean. Shit didn't change for 20 plus years.
Not at all. But this is a Ram story.
Yeah.
That's an origin story. This is where it all began.
The origin story.
This is the origin. This is the origin story. This is how my OCD ways kicked in. This is the insanity that became my general behaviour patterns, and this is where I think my very first experience that I remember of my mind being absolutely fucking blown. Right, and Space 1999 contributed to it, but we used to go to this guy's house, and this kid. Right, he was the oldest of two, and so he had a younger brother, and his younger brother used to freak me the fuck out, because his younger brother, I used to go home and go, Mum, what's wrong with Todd? And she'd say, what are you on about? I go, well, what's wrong with his hair? And she says, what do you mean? I go, well, why is his hair fucking bright red? Did he paint it? I'm not being funny. I'd never seen a redhead before. This was 1979. There were things I didn't see. I'd never seen an Asian before, and I'd never seen a kid with ginger hair. Now Now, here's the fucking ironic thing. God got back at me because I lost all my hair, but he kept it, obviously. I'm sure he's probably got beautiful red locks as I speak. I don't know where he is now, but back in 1979, he had bright red hair. Now, what didn't strike me at the time was that his mum had bright red hair.
Nah.
Right? Now, okay, that's genetics being passed on from,
Yeah, sure.
But his mum had bright red hair, and he had bright red hair. Now, here's the other thing, right? And I'm not making this up. He had a funny eye. He had one of those eyes that would look at you but not look at you.
The lazy eye.
No, it gets fucking even more bizarre.
Yeah.
And I could never work it out. So I used to go over there and hang out with his older brother because his older brother was my age. But his younger brother freaked me out. Because his younger brother was probably, if I was 4, I think his younger brother was about maybe 2. I remember him being like a toddler, being in nappies and shit. Because I thought I was big and tough being 4.
Yeah, fair enough.
Right. Anyway, that's how I roll. And I'd go home to Mum. This is no bullshit. And I'd say, Mum, what's wrong with this kid? And she'd say, what do you mean? I go, how come he's got this funny hair? She goes, what are you talking about? I go, why is his hair that colour? And she said, well, that's his colour. He's got red hair. And I go, what's wrong with his eye? His eye doesn't look at you, but it kind of... She goes, oh... She didn't really explain it, but she kind of tried to like make it nice. But she said, well, he lost his eye.
Okay, so he had an artificial eye.
He had an artificial eye,
okay.
which, let me put it to you...
Shit, at that age. Fuck
it's pretty... I feel pretty bad about this. I've never told anyone this. I've never told anyone this. This is a fucking podcast where I come and I tell people shit that I've never told anyone before, but I tell fucking the internet now.
Jesus Christ.
Right?
That's all right. We only got like 4 listeners.
We've got like 4 listeners. Who gives a fuck? One of them's Mum. Now...
Sorry, Mum.
Here's the thing. I couldn't work it out. Mum's saying, well, he had an accident and all this stuff. But the word on the street amongst us kids was that a magpie had taken his eye. And I believed it. I believed it so much that up until the age of 35, I used to think that birds would attack your eye. I'm not fucking making this up. Because I remember we used to play golf.
Yeah.
I used to play golf.
Yeah, magpies used to come and swoop.
And magpies would come in the spring and they'd take your golf ball and they'd zoom up and,
they're assholes.
So I used to think, well, fuck, if they can do that, they could have taken this kid's eye out. I believe this shit so much.
That shit could totally happen.
That years and years later, I'm talking when I got in my 40s and randomly I'm talking to Mum about this shit. She says, no. He didn't lose his eye. A bird never attacked his eye. Where'd you hear that shit? I go, Gary the Asian fucking said it.
Can't be trusted, Gary the Asian.
I don't know where he is now, but he's fucked now. He's in his 50s, so he's... Who knows what he's fucking... But the thing is, I believed it. I believed it.
Hook, line and sinker.
Hook, line and sinker. That a bird had taken this poor kid's eye out, right? And I said, well, Mum, what happened? And she goes, oh, he had this... growth behind his eye and they had to remove it. It's tragic. It really is sad. And it's even sad to think that in 1979, who knows what that eye looked like now, because it wasn't like fucking Nexus 6 with, in bloody, what do you call it?
Assuming
Blade Runner. It wasn't like Blade Runner with that eye doctor's making the artificial eyes with the tubes in his...
Yeah, but I assume that they've upgraded them as they go along.
Maybe, but
right?
that poor kid, man, he would have copped some shit. I mean, we never teased him. Don't get me wrong, we never teased him. He always came with us. He always hanged out. He was the coolest kid, but I could never work it out. And I always thought this fucking bird had taken his eye.
So is that why we used to paint our stack hats with eyes and shit?
I was scared shitless of birds because you'd go for a bike ride in the spring and these magpies would be hovering around, and I used to think these fucking birds took this kid's eye out.
Yeah.
I kept it to myself.
So I remember vividly you painting eyes on the back of your yellow fucking stack hat.
Well, the stack hat was an 80s thing. You used to ride your bike, right? And I didn't have a very cool bike. I had a rally. And I really wanted a BMX, but we didn't get a fucking BMX, right? Fuck this thing. Anyway, like I'm thinking, well, I really want a BMX. That can just go down like that. You know what? That's Pottery Pete.
That's Pottery Pete.
Pottery Pete's here, everyone.
It's Pottery Pete standing.
He's just there. But fuck
just put it on the table. Fuck me.
Jesus Christ. Anyway. But for years, I really, really believed that that's what happened to this kid. Now, one day when we were a lot older and we'd moved and we hadn't seen these kids for so long, so many years, that I was painting my bloody stack hat because if you remember in the 80s...
I can remember it vividly.
Okay, in the 80s, there was really only one helmet you could ride.
Big ass stack hat, where you made your head so motherfucking heavy that you would be struggling to...
That's right. And kids used to tease you because they'd go, what's wrong?
We're wearing a stack hat.
We're wearing a stack hat.
Fucking wimp.
You fucking poof.
Yeah.
Oh, shit, can't say that. Fucking demonetised. Anyway, who gives a fuck? That's what, 20 F-bombs now. Jesus Christ. Oh, friggin'. I've said something about Jesus. Oh, my God. Anyway, I believed it, and I was painting eyes on the back of my stack hat, and you're right, because Mum would come out and she goes, What are you doing painting eyes on? I said, because I don't want the birds to attack me and take my eye, because I slipped up. Yeah. And she says, what do you mean take your eye? And I said, don't you remember that kid that used to live in the old house? His eye got taken by a bird. She goes, what are you talking about? I go, that kid with the red hair, and I used to hang out with his older brother, the bird came and took his eye. And she said, who told you that? I go, Gary the Asian. And she says, who's Gary the Asian? And I said, well, Gary, you remember the older kid that used to live behind, back near the Fords? Because there used to be the Fords used to live on the left hand. They had older kids that had left and got married. This is back in 79, so they're fucking old now. They're fucked. But they were over here. So Gary and the Asian people.
The Asian people.
Well,
generic Asian.
They were Chinese, I believe, but they were very much Australianised.
Yeah.
Like, they grew up here. Man,
yeah.
But I'm telling you now, don't mean to be funny. I'm not trying to be racist. Or you go into it. But you didn't... In that part of the world, there wasn't that many back then.
No, there was...
Right?
Absolutely.
There wasn't.
Yeah.
So, flash forward fucking 20 plus years later, I'm painting my stack hat in the garage in the newer house, and she says, what do you... I go, well, the birds will come and get... And because I was playing cadets at golf, right...
We both were.
We both were playing golf every Saturday, and you would see the bloody magpies in the spring and summer. They'd swoop down, take your golf balls and take them up into the tree. And so I'm thinking, they fucking took this kid's eye out.
Yeah, absolutely, mate.
And I told this mum, and she's like, you idiot. You're an idiot. And she told me he had a thing growing behind his eye, like a growth. And they had to remove his eye. He lost his eye, this poor kid.
Don't you feel like a prick?
I feel fucked. I feel terrible. I've admitted that. But anyway, that's not the Ram story. That's more of a confessional.
Yeah, it's a confessional.
That's
Fair
a
enough.
confessional.
Yeah. It's a very long fucking Ram story.
Oh, gee, we've got nothing else to talk about. So anyway, I'd go to this kid's house after watching Space 1999, and there were a couple of things that blew my mind. The first one was they used to have red carpet.
Trendy.
That's 1979. You had to wear sunglasses in this joint. They had red and green carpet because they had. Now, I don't know if you wouldn't remember, but in the 70s and the 80s, particularly the 70s, it was very, very common for people to do an extension. They'd call it a rumpus room.
Yeah.
And they had a rumpus room, and in that rumpus room, they used to have these green carpet tiles.
Yep.
And they used to have this bouncy ball thing. This you used to bounce on it.
Yeah, it used to have the two handles like this. Yeah.
It was the shit, folks. And you used to jump on that. But this kid also had something in the 70s which was absolutely it was the shit. He used to have a green machine.
A green machine?
A fucking Google that. A green machine. A green machine was like this bike thing, like a tricycle thing. They were the shit. But he'd grown out. That's them. But now fucking Huffy's got on board with it, so now it's cool. That's not the original.
That's the modernised
version of it. But the green machine was the shit. That's the newest. This is all new shit. But they used to
this fucking thing.
Well, that's it. They used to. That's not
it's motorised, man. It's got
they've modernised this shit. But the green machine in the 70s was unbelievable, and he had one. This house blew my mind. This is not the big one though. I'm getting to the big one. But he had a green machine. Actually, I'm trying to remember. That's more like it there.
This one, yeah.
Yeah, that one. But that's probably even more of a modern version because I don't remember those things. I remember more of it being a steering.
That looks like it's to propel it.
Yeah, that's a bit more of a modern one. But the concept's the same.
Yeah, same sort of thing.
And the green machine was big business. Every kid in the 70s wanted a green machine for Christmas. I'm telling you now, right? Even more than the Atari. They wanted a green machine. And so He had a green machine and he had one of those bouncy balls. He had two of them. He had a blue one and he had a green one.
Remember the bouncy balls?
Yeah, his brother had one and he had one. Now, here's the thing that blew my mind. I always would have dinner there and they'd have cordial for dinner.
As you do.
And I'm talking...
Dad would never let us drink that shit.
Okay, that's the thing, right? Because again, 70s, no one gave a fuck about nutrition in the 70s.
There was no such thing, mate. It wasn't a science back then. It was have some fucking sugar and just shut up.
No one gave a fuck.
No one was nobody was ketogenic back then, mate.
Or vegan. Or whatever the fuck. So here's the thing. I'd have cordial at dinner and then I'd go home and go, hey, Mum, do you know what they had for dinner? And she's like, what? I go, they had cordial. And Dad's like, we're not having that shit here. But he was drinking, it was like a Pepsi thing, but it was, I think it was Tab. Back in the fucking, this is going, but mate, I'm talking Tab. And I'm telling you now, back in those days, things were very different in the soft drink business. Because they used to have, you know how you got the PET bottles?
Yeah.
Well, back in those days.
It was glass, right?
No. It was plastic, but they used to have a plastic cup on the end of it, a black one. And then sometime in the...
I remember that. They did too.
Yeah, and then sometime in the 80s, they said, fuck, that's costing us too much. So they took that off, and they just used to leave it as the 4 or the 5...
The 4 little feet, because those little feet used to go into a plastic cup to give it a flat bottom.
That's right. They used to have a plate, all right? And then they said that's too expensive. And so now, to this very fucking day... If you go into a supermarket and you see that with the feet, that used to be covered in a plastic
to give it a flat bottom,
right?
Yeah, for stability.
And I remember because we in 1983 in third class we used to make triariums, right? We used to take those bottles in and we used to cut the top of them, and then we used to put like a fern in there, and then we'd tip them over and put the plastic thing on top. I fucking remember. So anyway, they used to drink cordial. Dad was like, oh fuck that, fuck. This is a Pepsi household.
Have you ever wondered why we swear so much?
I'm sorry. What are we up to? 50 now?
I don't know. I'll do the statistics later. It makes no difference.
All right, fuck it. So anyway, he used to say, no, this is a Pepsi household. Go fuck off. And if it wasn't Pepsi, because things were desperate, they used to drink Tab. And back in those days, the cans used to have the two tabs, the two punchy things. It wasn't like the ring and you go, it wasn't like that.
That technology had not been...
The technology wasn't there yet. So you used to have the big hole and the small hole. I'm talking about holes again. Pottery Pete, where are you? So you used to punch I think you used to punch the small hole first. To get the gas out, and then you punch the big hole. But you'd always fuck it. Someone would always like get the big hole and the gas would come out and you'd have a fucking disaster. I think people lost their eyes over it. That's why they changed to the ring thing. Like that poor redhead kid I'm talking about. But anyway, the thing is, they used to have cordial, and I'd never had cordial before. It blew my mind. Now, here's the big thing from a collectible point of view, right? Back in 1979, this blew my mind. They used to follow VFL.
So for those of
not AFL.
For those of you that are not in our country, Aussie Rules Football.
Aussie Rules Football. And this was before Sydney had a team.
Before the Swans,
Before the Swans.
So they were North Melbourne? What were they back then?
They were South Melbourne Bloods.
Melbourne, that's it.
So South Melbourne was still around in 1979. They came up in 81, I think, or maybe 81. So this is before then. And so these are highly... if I could go back in time now, and if the DeLorean picked me up, I'd go back to their house in 1979 because they both had these plushies. Because one of them supported Hawthorn, so he had the hawk. He had a big fuck-off hawk. It was about this big.
Must have been a massive bogan.
And the other one supported the Melbourne Demons.
Okay, even better.
And it was a demon holding the fork.
That's unreal.
Oh, mate, it was the shit. And I was like, oh, man. So I didn't even know what VFL was. Because Dad wasn't even watching it.
Yeah, we only have really had one uncle that was very much
we'll get to that at another time, right? But, so they had that. Here's where my mind was blown. I'll never fucking forget it. This is when my start of my obsession behaviour began. So we went out to the living room, and it was a very small... I mean, back then, houses were very small compared to what they are.
Yeah, of course they were,
right?
though. Yeah.
So we went out to the front room, and they had a normal TV, like a Rank Arena or something, and it was like a big fucking CRT, and it had the wood grain on the side of it. Because back then, folks, everything was wood grain to make it premium.
Yeah.
Right? And so it had it was on legs, like a big...
As most TVs back then were. They used to put the little imprints in the carpet because they were so fucking heavy.
That's right.
Yep.
Right? And on top of the TV, I'll never forget it, was a VHS video cassette recorder.
Fuck me.
Fucking fuck.
Jeez. VHS, not Betamax.
No, not Betamax.
So VHS back in the 1970s.
Yeah. Do you now keep it to yourself? Do you now see how this is going to loop around to be a dad story?
I can absolutely see this being a dad story.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they had on top of this TV a ginormous video cassette recorder, and I'm talking big. I wish Pottery Pete was here because he loved it.
He'd probably remember it. Yeah.
They had I don't know what brand it is. It might have been
there weren't that many around.
I think it was a JVC.
Yeah.
Because they were one of the first
JVC, they would have been the premium.
Yeah, they were one of the first manufacturers of the VHS format. So it was a big thing, and it used to be top loaded. It wasn't like
so the thing used to pop up and you go
so it was like a proper like a cassette player.
Yep.
And you'd put the cassettes in and you'd lower it down. The other thing was it had proper mechanical switches. So if you wanted to play it, you had to go. You had to press down
like a tape player.
Like a tape player, right?
For those children out there listening to the show, a tape player
they don't listen. No one fucking listens to us. It's a shit podcast. People have got better things to do than listen to this.
I certainly hope they got better things to do.
Fuck me. Anyway, you press it down.
Yep.
Right? And it would make the cassette play, or it would fast forward or rewind and all that shit. And of course, because it was premium, it was also in wood grain. But this was a big fucking thing. And it also had the... you
can just imagine the pressure on the floorboards.
Oh, it was huge, man.
The TV.
But it also had those... What do you call those needles?
Yeah,
I don't... Audio needles?
Yeah,
what do you call it?
Well, the output. It's basically telling you the...
Yeah, so like a thing.
Next time we see Pottery Pete,
when Pottery Pete comes, we'll ask him what that is, because I'll say, you should have been here. But it used to have the thing like this.
Yeah.
Right? So the needle would go up and down with the voice.
Almost like a decibel meter.
Like a decibel meter, yeah. Anyway, the other thing that blew my mind is that it had a remote control.
Gee.
Now I'm telling
you. You and I were remote controls for Dad up until like the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. But this remote control had a wire attached to it.
So fucking useless.
So pretty much, right? But it was back in the 70s and the 80s, that was how a lot of controls were. To have an IR remote control was a big fucking deal. But he had a remote control. Now, here's what blew my mind in many, many, many ways. The first thing is, I said, what's that? And the kid that I was hanging out with, I try and keep names out of this.
Yeah, fair call.
Because they might be listening because we're so fucking popular. But he was...
global phenomenon.
We're fucking skyrocketing. And he was saying to me, oh, that's a video player. I go, what is it? He goes, my dad records football games on it.
Perfectly legally.
Well, it was back then.
Back then it probably would have been.
No, it was. It was legal. And I'm like, what do you mean record? I don't understand. And he's like, well, he likes to watch he actually was a pioneer, this bloke. He would watch VFL games and he'd watch rugby union games.
Goodness me.
Oh, fuck. And there was a third thing about his dad, because his dad pulled up one day from work, not in a car, but in a motorbike. I'd never fucking seen one. I couldn't believe what I was... I go, what the fuck's he got? And he says, that's his motorbike. I go, what do you mean? He doesn't have a car? He goes, oh yeah, Mum's got a car.
So clearly they were fairly well-to-do family.
No, they weren't. No, but he was like a pretty...
He was an early adopter. He liked his...
He was an early adopter, but I think he was a bit of a hippie too.
Yeah, okay.
And actually, I think he worked for the bank.
So he was earning a decent sum.
Yeah, I think... Yeah, they weren't like poor or anything, but no one where we lived was like...
Desolate,
but they weren't like ultra wealthy driving Rolls Royces and shit. But I don't think he was short of a quid. But it wasn't a big house. I'm telling you now, it was not a big house. It was a very humble place.
Houses weren't
big. But it had bright green fucking carpet and orange carpet. So
which you'd still love to have in your house. Let's be honest.
Shit, yeah. But here's the thing. He pulls up in a motorbike. I couldn't tell you what the motorbike was. I can't remember. And he got off the bike. And anyway, the kid I was hanging out with is like, well, I'll get Dad to play a movie for us. And I'm like, what? Fucking what? Anyway, his dad comes in, and because I was going to stay for dinner at this point, and his dad goes, oh, look, I've got you kids a movie to watch. And I'm like, what the fuck is he talking? What is he?
How do you play a movie on the... What are you talking about?
Oh, my mind was about to be turned into mush. Because then his dad goes, now listen, it was a very fucking 70s thing. After dinner, you got to have a shower, get in your Jimmy Jams, and we'll watch the movie. So I'm at the back fence telling Mum, get the fucking shit over the back fence. Get the
Throw those pajamas over.
Throw the pajamas over.
Yeah.
Get the blanket.
Get the blanket. That's it.
There's
I'm
some
done.
shit going on. Space 1999 was taking a back seat at this point. Dinner was done in the Jimmy Jams like you do as kids back in the 70s. You got your sleeping bag. Usually we got sleeping bags. You slept on the floor, but he had bunks, which I thought was pretty cool as well. And the movie that his dad had brought home was Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope.
Fuck me.
Fuck.
Yep.
My mind, I'd never seen Star Wars before.
Yep.
Because, again...
It was released, obviously, when you were quite young. Yeah.
It was 77.
Yeah.
I was 2 years old, so it was too young for me.
Yeah.
But in 79, I don't know how he got his hands on it. Maybe it was a rental. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
Right? I really don't remember that. But I remember watching it on his VHS.
But would the video
player.
easies and places like that have even existed at that point?
Yeah, we'll get to that. I mean, but this was like, I couldn't tell you what. Not only was the movie mind blowing, but the situation was mind blowing, right? And it just got a little bit even more mind blowing when I said, "Look, I really need to pee," and I was very proud of myself because I could do it on my own without my mummy, right? And
How things have changed.
and the kid, I just pissed my pants now. I wear a nappy. That's how old I am. But the kid I was hanging out with goes, "Oh, that's all right," and because he'd learned how to do it, he's just jumped up and pressed the pause button, and I saw the picture
with the little lines through it
on the fucking with the lines through it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the movie stopped.
How the fuck?
What the? And he goes, "It'll be all right. I'll wait till you come back and I'll press play again." The mind was gone. And so the next day, when I finally woke up and watched Star Wars for a second and third fucking time, got back home, I said, "Mum, they've got this thing called a video cassette recorder. We need one." And Dad's an early adopter, so he knew what we were talking about, but he goes, "There's no point." And mind you, I kind of see what he was coming at, because TV was not like TV now. Like it was only free to air, there was no cable, there was no Foxtel, there was no Netflix, there was none of this shit. It was
no
only
Hulu.
It was none of it. It was only what was on at the time,
Live stream
and you
from
had
whatever's
TV station there was on, and you had to be there at that time to watch that show. If you missed that show, you're fucked. But in my little head, I was onto it. Because I'm like, you know what? I'll never miss Space 1999
You'll be able to
again.
You'll be able to record it.
I'll record it, right? That's how I was thinking. I'm like, I'll just get Mum to record it. Now,
Yep.
little did I know, recording was an absolute debacle.
I was going to say, imagine convincing Mum.
Oh, she can't work a fucking phone in 2019. But I thought someone would help me out with this problem.
Sorry, Mum.
Sorry, Mum. So I thought someone would be able to help me out with this problem I had. Someone would be able to help me record Space 1999
Yep.
so that I could watch it whenever I wanted to watch it.
Surely Dad could figure that shit out.
He did.
Yeah.
But it took a lot longer than 1979 to convince him, right? So I'm like, okay, here's the thing. We need one. And he's like, I don't even know what it is. I said, well, listen, just go over to their house and you'll see it. And I think he might have. And he wasn't convinced. But over time, a couple of things happened. But it would take till 1984 before we got one.
Jeez.
And Dad being Dad, the early adopter, and also the...
I'll stop you there for a second.
Yep.
It just shows you how slow the technology ramp was back then, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that you're talking 1979, 5 years essentially
Well, it's
before...
it's not like it is now. Like now...
The same technology was still in place essentially 5 years later.
Well, I mean, this was a very, very early
Dad's still
model.
an early adopter, right? So there would have been people that came way the fuck after that.
Well, things are not lasting as long as they used to in terms of technology. Like, you get a mobile phone, you probably have it for maybe 2 years, 3 years tops, and you're over it. Back then, things. I believe the VCR came out in the very, very late or maybe mid 70s. Was not commercially viable for anybody until the very late 70s, and not many people really thought it was necessary to probably the mid 80s. And then I can remember us having it up until probably 1999 because we replaced it when the PS2 came out for the DVD player.
That's right. That's right.
We convinced him to get a PS2 for the DVD player.
Jeez, we did a good one on that one.
Oh, we fucking did a number on him on that one. But but the thing was that we were... I'd convinced him, like, I think it's really awesome. And I don't know what it was, but I think for him, he started to figure out that you could get all these movies at the local shop or wherever it was, and you could bring them home. And so it was 1984, and we got a VCR, but it was a Betamax.
I remember it. I think you still got it.
He probably does, because he won't let it go. He fucking won't let it go. And that's what leads to the dad story. So I've gone from Ram to dad, right? So he jumped on, because dad being dad, he did all of his research, and he bought what he believed was probably the better VCR.
It was the better system.
That's right. And so for him, he's put all of his stock into a Betamax video recorder, because back then, of course, there was a format war going on. There was Beta versus VHS, all that sort of stuff. And so he got this Beta video recorder, and it was technically better than a VHS. It really was. And I know that he spent a lot of money on this particular.
You would have researched the fuck out of it.
Well, it was like, I think it was a Toshiba, I think. And it was awesome, because I remember it had like an actual proper ejecting like feeds, like a caddy. It wasn't like the one I'd seen, like the top load.
No, you used to feed it in.
This was feed it in and it was all proper remote control. It had proper buttons. It had like a time. It was the shit, right? And so I can remember like when he got it, the big thing was on a Friday or Saturday night, we used to go into town and we'd get like a movie rental.
Remind me, is that where the Dan Murphy's is?
Yeah.
It used to be this massive motherfucking warehouse,
it was
right?
It was called the Video Barn.
Yep.
Right.
Because it was basically a barn. It was huge.
So here's the thing. Back then, Civic Video and Blockbuster were the main franchises, but there was still the mum and pop or independent stores. And so the one we used to go to, the big one, was called the Video Barn. And he had a membership there, right? So you'd go in and you'd get, I don't know, they used to have different, they had like the brand new releases and you had to return them the next day, which is, think about where we are now. You download a movie or you stream a movie, right? That's it.
You literally had to take the thing back.
You had to take the fucking thing back, and you had to get in your car, drive to the shop,
and it was it was a 20-minute plus drive.
It gets even worse. You had to put the fucking thing through a parachute at the front door. And
you had to rewind it.
And they would charge you $1 or $2 if you didn't rewind the fucker. So if you went into the shop and someone was there, they would look at the thing and they go, "Oh, you didn't rewind it." Which was wearing out the machine when you rewound it as well. That was Dad's big thing, but you had to rewind it. And I can remember you'd get a movie and you go, "Oh, it's
how much were the rentals? Were they like $5 for?
They weren't cheap. I mean, they were $5, maybe $5 for a premiere movie.
Fuck me.
Or maybe
back then in the early 80s. That's a lot of money.
It was a lot of money, and it was like maybe $10 for the older movies for weekly. But sometimes they had like specials, $10 for 3 movies. For a week.
Still not cheap.
Compared to what today's standards are.
$10 a month, or you can watch.
Exactly right. That's why people don't really understand.
And inflation. Fuck me, that's quite expensive.
That's what I mean. People don't get the power of the internet in terms of how it's changed how we consume media. People don't understand it. To think that you would have to get, if I told a young person today, you need to get in your car, drive 10 or 15 minutes.
Pay for petrol,
look for the movie you want to watch.
Which takes you a shit ton. It's worse than a Netflix interface.
Then come back home, play it, and the quality of the tape is dependent on how many times it's being used and
sometimes
how many people have paused it and fucked it around. And the tape was usually shit, right? Because it'd have all sorts of fucking issues because it was an old tape. And I remember Dad going, "Oh, the quality's not good," because it was a very old rental movie, or it was maybe a very popular movie and people were watching the shit out of it. All that shit. And so you were really at the mercy of the quality of the tape. And I can remember so many times you'd go into that video barn and you'd be walking around and, there'd be like, "Oh, well, that movie's not available yet." "Oh, fuck, they've taken that." That was the other thing. "Oh, someone's already taken that movie." So say the latest...
That's right, because they used to have the display copy and then you'd have to go behind it.
That's right.
Pick up, and oftentimes you'd pick it up, "Oh, fuck, there's nothing there."
That's right. So behind the time, if there was no... They'd have the case...
And fuckers used to hide videos in other...
That's right. Fuckers would hide videos, right? It was So say one of the big releases might have been... I'm just pulling... Return of the Jedi. I'm pulling that out of my ass. But back in 80...
Titanic.
No, Titanic was that was in the DVD era, right? But Return of the Jedi.
Yep.
Right. When that came out, probably on video in 84, because it was released in the movies in 83. Say it was 84 by the time it came out. People would fucking snap that up, and you'd go to, and even though, because that was their big catch cry, the big excuse me, the big retail video outlets was the big. Oh, we've got 20 copies of this movie.
That's it. Yeah.
Right, remember that? It was like, don't worry, we've got 50 copies of it. We'll guarantee that we've got a copy of it for you, which is just fucking insane. They had 50 copies of the same fucking movie in a like, that's mind-blowing.
Just the physical space that
space,
single fucking movie would have taken up.
Yep. Insane.
And the wastage when they threw half of them out.
Insane, right? And so you'd go in there and you'd look for your Return of the Jedi, because I used to go and get Return of the Jedi every fucking time. And you'd hope that you'd get a copy of it. And when it got less and less popular, you would, right? And then you'd take it back home and you'd watch it and the quality wasn't that great. And then you'd have to rewind it and take it back, all that shit. But as time went on, I discovered a couple of things. The first thing, I discovered the adult section. Because there was a group of movies called Electric Blue.
Yep.
Right? I don't want to Google it.
I was going to say, let's not
Don't Google it.
Let's not Google that.
Don't Google it.
Yeah.
And they used to have, I would even suggest that the modern era, they'd be banned in terms of what they showed as the cover.
Certainly not for children.
Because it was pretty obvious to an adult what the fuck it was.
Yeah.
And there was like a whole series of these things. It was like Electric Blue 2, Electric Blue 3, Electric Blue 7. There was fucking heaps of them. There was stacks of them.
Well, that was the start of the very start of the porn industry. Yeah.
I really, really wanted to watch one of them.
Yeah, fair enough.
Big time.
I want to watch one now.
And I do too. And so Dad was like, I picked one up one day because every Saturday night or every Friday night, the thing was we'd go up to the video barn and we'd get fish and chips. Actually, it was probably,
I remember that. Yeah.
Or maybe KFC.
No.
It was fish and chips.
It was fish and chips. Yeah.
Right.
We used to watch the Leyland Brothers
This
first.
is before we were getting fish and chips from Con, the most depressed fish and chip man.
That's another story.
That's
another ram for later on.
That's another story.
Yeah.
But you'd go and get to the video barn. You get while you were getting your fish and chips, you'd look for You'd look for the video you wanted. And I'd always pick up Return of the Jedi. And he'd be like, how many times do you want to watch that movie? I'm like, oh, as many as I want. Because again, back in those days, you didn't have the internet. You didn't have Netflix. You didn't have, cable or Foxtel, whatever you want to call it. It was literally, you're at the mercy of the TV stations and you could get your hands on a video. And later on, you could buy VHSs for your... That was a big deal too. Now on VHS to buy, and you'd go and buy the thing on VHS or Beta. But back then, it used to be pretty obvious that even in the early 80s, the VHS library was bigger.
It's winning the
war.
And
it was winning the war. And the Beta market was a little bit smaller. And every time you go back to the video barn, they'd taken another shelf away and they'd given it to the VHS crowd. And it got to the point where there was literally one fucking aisle for Beta and the whole barn. And I'm talking a barn.
It's
You're right.
huge,
it's
mate.
Now
It's
Dan
now Dan
Murphy's.
Murphy's.
It's a Dan Murphy's
a
now.
massive place.
And let me tell you about Dan Murphy's. People go on there with their fucking shopping trolley and fill it up full of booze.
Yeah.
So it's no joke.
Mate, it used to take us forever to walk around the fucking thing.
It's no joke
Yeah.
how big it is, right? And it got to a stage where there was a fucking corner of Beta videos
Dad
to
must
rent.
have lost his shit.
I'll tell you the fucking story. And there was the rest of the place was VHS. So you don't have to be fucking Einstein to work out who'd won the war.
That's it.
Right?
VHS is one.
So I've gone to Dad one day because I'd given up. Because I'd go in there and go, fuck this. Everything I want's on VHS. So
I'm sure you didn't word it that way.
in my mind. So I've gone to Dad one night. I've gone, look, Dad, can you tell me why VHS has got more movies and Beta's got hardly any? And Dad'd go, well, Beta's better format. I go, well, if it's better, how come they've got more and we've got fuck all? Or to that effect. And Dad goes, I don't give a shit. And I go, well, I think we should get a VHS. We're not getting a fucking VHS. And I'm like, well, Dad, I really think we should get a VHS because there's no movies here. And he's like, fuck that. The Beta's better. And that was his catch. Beta's better.
Yep.
Beta's better.
Yep.
But then I planted a seed in his head. Because then I said to him one day in the video barn, I go, listen, Mum wants this movie to watch. I think it was fucking Romancing the Stone or
some shit. Yep.
Michael Doug, because she had a thing for Michael Douglas, right?
Dreamy.
He's dreamy. And I remember saying, she wants to watch this movie, but I can't find it on Beta, Dad. She wants it on VHS.
Fuck me.
I was fucking manipulating as early as that, right? And Dad's like, oh, fuck, I don't give a shit. This is what we're going to get. And he'd walk up and down the aisle, and it wasn't even an aisle now. It was a corner. A corner.
It's a long drive for a corner.
A corner. And I said, listen, Dad, I think we should get a VHS. We're not getting a fucking... Right, that was...
This is no exaggeration, brother.
This is in 1987 to 88. This went on, and I'd given up the ghost. Finally, in 1993, he bought a VHS. That's how long it took him to admit defeat that the Beta was actually...
That's a long time.
That's a long time. But then he got like a... What is it? Like a 6-head hi-fi fucking stereo. Because that was the thing. Because he says, yeah, but if I get a new one, I want to make sure it's a stereo one, not a mono one. Because he wanted a surround sound system.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that doesn't really help us today, Dad. Like, there's a corner. There's a corner of movies.
That's it.
But in the end, we stopped going to the video barn, and by the time we got the VHS,
we're too busy playing games anyway.
We're too busy playing PC to give a shit. But, you know, you used to record all your shows on it. Like, I remember recording Star Trek The Next Generation to the shithouse, and payback was to make him watch it, right? But, yeah, that was it. I mean, that was the really big... That's it, Captain Picard, man. I never thought I'd have the hairline of Captain Picard, but I do.
You got less hair than Captain Picard.
Yeah, I know. But that was it. That was the moment when Dad was like, he lost his shit in the middle of the video barn, saying, "I don't give fuck." And I go, "Well, we're driven half an hour, Dad, for what?" That was the other thing. I go, "We've driven half an hour, Dad, for what?" There's nothing here, mate.
Because it was literally a half-hour drive.
But then he'd go, oh, fuck, we've already watched it. Because they had the same movies in the same corner. He goes, oh, we've already watched it. And he'd go, and he knew his time was up.
This is the same guy that still won't adopt Netflix.
That's another fucking story. Over the modern era.
He's still in the old ways.
You can't change him, man. But he really, really did push for a very, very long time that the idea was, I don't give a fuck, it's got more movies. The Beta is a better machine. And because his last defense was
they use it in the
TV and movies.
Yep. This is what they actually record.
This is what they shoot in the TVs and the movies. It's like, oh fuck, all right. Well, if that's the way it's going to be. He couldn't. It took a long time to wear him down, just like it took me a long time for him to get a 486. It took a long time for him to get a thingo. And then he had the VHS from 1993. I'll never forget, because I was at uni, all the way to 2000, when the PS2 was out. Because I said to him, well,
DVDs
the fucking VHS is dead, Dad. No one's doing VHS. Really. You know, we should get a DVD player, and the PS2 is your best option. It's cheap, and we can play games on it.
Because it was cheap for what it was.
That was what really, to me, got the PS2 way over the top of anything else.
Yeah, it was cheap. It's a DVD player,
and I know the Xbox One could play. The Xbox original could play DVDs as well, but it was kind of gimped. You had to buy like a adapter or something for it to play? It wasn't unlocked. No. They kind of gimped it. And that was a bit of a mistake, because if they hadn't have gimped it, it might have been a bit of a more runaway success, because it was the right place at the right time. It was a DVD player when DVDs was just starting to take off.
Very clever piece.
Particularly in Japan.
Very forward thinking.
Yep, particularly for Japan.
Yep.
And I don't care what anyone says, but the PS2 was originally targeted or marketed as a multimedia device.
Yeah.
As opposed to a
which is funny because then
games machine.
Yeah, it's what the Xbox guys tried to do, and
Sony did it as well with the PS3. They tried that.
It's interesting. Oh dearie me, that was a
long ram. But that's the thing. I mean, we're leaking water here, man.
Are we?
Yeah.
How the fuck's that possible?
I don't know.
It must be just condensation.
It's condensation. It's very hot. It's very hot here. So there's I don't know if it's going to electrocute us.
There's nothing electrical there, mate. It's just an audio
Could be
cable.
the end of my illustrious but very short-lived
That's right, mate.
internet career.
All of your thousands of viewers will be very, very upset.
They won't give a fuck. All two of them.
So what else you want to talk about today, Dano?
I want to talk about the 1990s.
Yep.
We talked a lot about the 80s last week. And I want to talk about the 90s because there's a particular game that we'll move and talk about. But the 1990s is a very interesting time in gaming, at least in my opinion, because in the very early 90s, like I'm talking about 92, 93, it was very hard to believe that anyone would rock the boat between Sega and Nintendo, because you had the Mega Drive, you had the Super Nintendo. They were pretty much there. PC was PC. It's always been there. It's always been there. But that particular battle, no one, I don't think, would ever believe what would end up happening in the 90s, particularly the mid-90s. Because around about 93, you started to get the news and the I guess the exposure of different companies wanted a piece of the pie. They saw it as a very lucrative part of.
It was a growing business.
It was a growing business, so they were sort of saying, "Okay, we want a piece of it as well." And so companies like 3DO wanted in, and that really intrigued me because I'm like, "Well, what's this 3DO shit?" And I'm going to get to a story that blew my mind with 3DO. And that was like, okay, what's all that about? And then Atari came back. They wanted to release a new console that they'd been out of the game for a long time, since the 7200, and they were coming back with a Jaguar. And so everyone was like, "Oh, that's Atari's back. Oh shit, okay." And they got a 64-bit machine, and of course Sega were going to be in with a Saturn, and of course Nintendo was, at the time it was the Ultra 64, but of course it was the N64, and then this little company that called themselves Sony wanted to come in and release this thing called PSX, which would later be the PlayStation. Yep. And I'll be guilty. I'm guilty as sin, as sitting back and going, none of these companies are going to fucking survive. There's no way. There's
a big enough market to support all
There's
of them.
no way the market's big enough. There's no way Sony knows what they're doing when it comes to video games. Like, what the fuck? They make TVs and movies. Fuck off. And, Atari, I thought, might have a chance, but they've been gone for too long, and they made a few too many errors. They kind of went more into computers, because they were like, was it the Atari ST?
Yep.
So the Atari ST was the thing that people were really... That was Atari at that point. They went into computers.
Yep.
And they were trying to compete with Commodore, I think, with the Amiga.
Yep.
And actually Commodore themselves too. Commodore wanted in the console space too, because they had... wanted to, they could see the writing on the wall with the Amiga 1200.
This is the stage when, really the PC was starting to take their business, right?
Yeah, but the Amiga 1200 was running out of steam, and they thought that the market was moving more towards console, and so they would end up releasing the Amiga CD32, which was basically a 1200 matched with a CD-ROM drive. Because I think they were tossing up the idea of bringing a CD-ROM to the Amiga 1200. But the Amiga 1200 sales were dropping. And that kind of blows my mind, because in the very early 90s and maybe the late 80s, the Amiga 500
that was a beast.
Was the shit. I'm telling you, it was the shit. We talked about it last week. I mean, our cousin had an Amiga 1000. But back
in the day, mate, the Amigas they were the graphic design beast.
Everyone was using it for that, and everyone was using it for games because it had an awesome sound chip in it. Had really good graphics chips in it too. I think it had like 3.
It was one of the first things that could ever draw a perfect circle.
Really? I didn't know that.
As opposed to... That was one of the differentiators between... I believe, and I could be pulling this completely out of my arse, is that the graphics chipset on it was able to draw a circle that was closer to perfect than what a PC could.
Yeah, that might be true.
Which is why graphic designers swarmed to it.
Yeah, because you got to remember, in the early 90s... Because in the early 90s, the idea of graphics cards as we have them today were not really existent. The late 90s would see that with like the 3D... The Voodoo 3D FX and those sort of cards. They came out, and then... Obviously, that would go on to the 2000s with the Radeons and all that, the ATIs, all that shit, and all the NVIDIAs, all that stuff as we know it today. But in the very early 90s, the landscape was changing, and it was changing rapidly. And I remember at that time, I really wanted a Super Nintendo, because I'd had a friend of mine. He had a Super Nintendo from school. He had a Super Nintendo, and I thought it was fucking amazing.
I remember Donkey Kong, and I remember the basketball game. Is this the same friend we're talking about?
Yeah.
Yep.
Let me tell you a story.
Right.
Let me tell you a story.
This is another RAM.
I'm sorry. I almost failed. I think it was either a high school subject for the HSC. In fact, I did. I failed my chemistry exam for the HSC because of NBA Jam.
Yep.
On the Super Nintendo.
He's on fire.
Boom shakalaka.
Boom shakalaka.
That, because we were given a week, and I think kids still get it now. They call it STUVAC, study vacation. So you get a week before.
You get more, I think.
Do you? Okay, so the HSC is a big end of high school examination. Yep. So end of year 12 examination. It's kind of like the examination that gets you into university here. And so you're given a week to sort your shit out. And that week, of course, I decided, fuck that. I'm going to play NBA Jam. And I played NBA Jam with this kid. And, of course, his mum was an awesome cook. So she'd make lunch for us, and fucking lunch would lead to dinner. You wouldn't leave the place.
Mate, they made the best food.
The only time I ever left the place was when he would say, hey, we're going to do the pig. And I'm like, what do you mean the pig?
We're going to do the pig.
He goes, and I'm like, what do you mean the pig? And he's like, well, you know.
We need to make some pastrami.
And I'm like, well, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah.
And he's like, we got to do the pig.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
rural living, mate.
Yeah. And he's like, well, and I'm like, because you'll feel the blood through your veins when you okay. Look, I'll be honest with you. I do like my salami. I like my prosciutto, but I don't want to fucking see how it's done.
I don't want to do a pig.
I don't. So that's the only time I left, because other than that, I was over there playing NBA Jam, and I was
DK. Yeah, DK as well.
No, that 94 was Donkey Kong Country, and 94. That was when I really, really wanted a Super Nintendo. But and there was also Super Empire Strikes Back, which that would
have done, yeah.
That I was really close, and I don't know why. I think the reason why I didn't do it was I was starting uni and I didn't have any fucking money, and I was like, I was running the Gemini, mate. The Gemini was sinking money like you couldn't believe.
That was a gas guzzler for the size of the car.
It was a gas guzzler, but it was also
heavy maintenance.
Fucking leaking oil, mate. Like I literally used to drive it with an oil bucket in the back of it. I used to drive with like an oil
top
bottle.
it up. Yep.
I'm not kidding. I would drive for maybe half an hour and drive back home for another half an hour, let it cool, and I'd have to put oil back in it. It was fucked. The piston rings on it, fucked. But I really wanted a Super Nintendo. But what I did, obviously the money was the factor, but the other thing was back then, there was rumours about the Ultra 64. And it's going to be a gargantuan and all this shit. And I kind of went, I don't want to put money into the Super Nintendo because this thing sounds like it's going to be the shit. But I love the Super Nintendo, and I enjoyed the Mega Drive as well. And I really enjoyed, because we were the PC gamers back then, because that's what we had. Yep. But I really enjoyed the schoolyard battles of, Sega's better than Nintendo. No, Nintendo's better than Sega. All that shit. And nothing's changed. We still have those battles
Yeah.
But I really, really was kind of thinking, well, things are changing too, because what's this 3DO and what's this Atari Jaguar and what's the rumours of Sony coming in? And so I think it was 93. There was a shop in near where we lived at the time, and it was called Game. Very, very small shop, and it wasn't Games Wizard. It wasn't the story of.
Yeah.
This is actually a little bit before the Doom story I told last week, but the Game was a very small shop. I think it was owned by it was a European or UK owned franchise or something like this. They've long since gone. Very small shop, and in that shop, they had the very first 3DO I'd ever seen, and it was a Panasonic one. And back then, if you remember, 3DO was a company that licensed the technology.
The technology, and other people would be able to make it.
That's right. So there was Gold Star.
Very forward thinking.
Yeah. There was Gold Star, there was Panasonic, and there was, was it NEC? No, NEC was doing TurboGrafx. It's going to do my head in. But there was three different... Sanyo. Sanyo was the company. Sanyo. But it was the Panasonic that was more widely known, at least here. But I went in there and I saw something that really blew my mind, probably right up until that point, the most ever, until I saw Doom. And they had running on this this 3DO, which was a Panasonic one, they had a revamped version of Road Rash, which was a Mega Drive game. And this thing had full motion video, and it looked fucking unbelievable. And I'm like, holy shit. And what really blew my fucking mind was that the opening credits was Rusty Cage by Soundgarden.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I've since got a 3DO, and I've got that game, and it doesn't hold up well today, but for the time, it was amazing. And because everyone was sort of moving away, apart from Nintendo, everyone was moving away from cartridge format. They were moving to CD-ROM. Everything was going on CD-ROM.
Longevity, right? They had lots of issues with the
But they had longevity, but they had more memory because
Yep.
the 670 megabytes on the disc as opposed to whatever they were constrained with a cartridge. Cheaper to manufacture and press. CD audio quality, all that shit. And so the big trends in those days, in the very early 90s, was going to CD-ROM and having full motion video, right? Because it seemed like everyone wanted to show off what CD-ROM could do by having
video in it.
Right? And so the version of Road Rash that I'd seen had full motion video in it. It had like a cop pull up with a fucking dog barking at the guy. It looked the fucking shit, and I wanted one so bad. But what killed me, and what I never went back to it again, was two things. The first thing was that it was $1,100.
Fuck me.
In
back
1993.
Then. Fuck. No wonder it never took off yet.
It never took off. It never took off anywhere because it was so fucking expensive. It was $1,100 in 1993. And that was the Panasonic model. I don't know what the other models retailed for because I never saw them. And I immediately stopped looking, and I was like, not interested in it now. And the other thing that I didn't like was the fact that I didn't like the controller. It had a really weird controller. And in a world where they were starting to move to more like more than two console ports or controller ports for the console.
Multiplayer, yeah.
For multiplayer, they went this weird daisy chain setup.
Oh, fuck.
So you would link the one controller to another controller via a daisy chain, so the controllers would link together. And that made
Sounds
it very...
way too hard.
That, plus it was awkward.
Yeah.
And the controllers were mushy, the buttons were mushy. It just... The D-pad was...
Just didn't work.
It just didn't feel right. And I don't think 3DO and I don't think Panasonic or any of the other manufacturers that were part of it knew what the fuck they were going to do with this thing. So it was very, very expensive and not well marketed. But all their games back then were basically showing off the full motion video qualities of it, of what it could do. And it was really shown off as a multimedia device. It was like
because it's DVD out of the box.
Kind of like that. It was kind of like what the PS2 was going to be later on. And so that's the way they moved. And then Atari was mysterious because I think they came out in 93 as well, but we probably didn't get it to 94. But they stuck with cartridge. And they were supposed to have, at the time at launch, a CD-ROM add-on. But that didn't come till later. I don't think it came to 95. And I've not Googled any of this shit. This is coming out of my...
Coming out of my ass. Yep.
But they called the CD add-on the toilet. Because it fucking looked like a toilet. It sat on top of the cartridge slot.
It looked like a potty, like a kid's potty.
It looked like a kid's potty. It didn't look good.
Yep.
Right? And they're quite hard to find. I've since got one, but they're very hard to find. And I'm like, oh fuck. Atari kind of messed it up, and they kind of got caught up in a bit of legal shit too because they said it was a 64-bit machine.
But it really wasn't.
It had a 32-bit sound processor and a 32-bit graphics processor or a CPU, whatever it was. And they were saying 32 plus 32 is 64, but in reality it was
That's not how it works.
It was really 60. It's a 32-bit. Because that was it. In the 90s, everything was marketed as bits. If the Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo were 16-bit, then everyone was going to 32-bit. So Sony's PlayStation was 32-bit. The Saturn was 32-bit. But Nintendo were going 64-bit. Legit. And even the Saturn, that kind of didn't appeal to me either. I don't know why. I mean, it didn't feel right. I didn't like the way they were sort of going with things. They didn't really speak to me, but they had some good games. Like the Daytona looked fucking unreal back then. And they had, I think they had a Virtua Racer game later on.
Hot. Sega made some fucking fantastic games.
And they had...
I mean, that's a conversation for another time.
That's another day.
One of our favourite things of all time.
Yeah, and then they had Virtua Fighter.
Yeah, which is a fantastic series.
Which I think they might have launched with or very close to launch, and that looked the shit as well. But the 90s was all about full motion video, and weird things would happen too, because games like Night Trap Night Trap was one of the first games that was to be banned from retail because of the content.
Because it's graphic.
Because of the graphic. It was about this chick getting locked up in the house by home invaders, and it's actually very collectible. I've got one now. Never played it because it's shit, but it's part of history. So that whole games are evil and games should be
that's where it started.
Banned and all that. That's where it started. So
it hasn't stopped.
No, it hasn't stopped. But the 90s, look, a lot of dirt might have been kicked up in the 80s. But the 90s, it fucking was a hornet's nest of this shit where people were like, games are
violent,
evil,
you're going to be violent, we're going to cause all sorts of things.
Everyone's going to fucking wear white sheets and burn shit. Fuck, I don't know. But it wasn't a good, it was weird. And it was just weird that to see these newcomers come in and you didn't know what was going to happen and where things were going to land. And the weirdest thing of all was Sony coming in. And they had this thing, it was codenamed PSX, but it would later on be the PlayStation. The controller looked weird to me at the time. Like, I have to be honest, I looked at the triangle, square, circle, and X and go, what the fuck? You don't know what you're fucking doing. What the? That's stupid. You idiots.
But
and here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. By the time the PlayStation came out, arguably, the 3DO was almost dead.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, they had the market open to themselves.
So it was... And arguably, the Atari Jaguar was almost dead as well. So already, two of these newcomers had bitten the dust.
Yep.
And so I didn't personally think Sony was going to be able to do it. And I thought they're going to be like another one to be thrown to the wolves, so to speak. But the games in the 90s were awesome. I talked about Doom. But in terms of the full motion video stuff, my favourite is Wing Commander.
What a great game. 3 and 4, both fantastic.
And I know that was PC. It did come to the PlayStation.
It did come to PlayStation eventually,
but I played it on the PC, and I loved that game.
Kilrathi, fuck, what a great game.
The whole thing about full motion video games is, by today's standards, they look really, really cheesy. And even I played
it's hard to do well.
Yeah, but I played a game on the PlayStation 4 the other day, and it's a fairly new release. Came out in 2016 called the Late Shift, and that's a interactive movie. I'll get to this.
So basically what they do on Netflix
and it's still is it Bandersnatch?
Bandersnatch, yeah.
Okay, well, I would argue that these interactive movies, their origins lie with full motion video games of the early 90s.
Yeah.
So games like Wing Commander. While Wing Commander is a space
Did Wing Commander 3 have the video, or was that 4 when the video...
No, 3 had the video. It had Mark Hamill in it.
Mark Hamill, well, yeah, so did 4.
And it had the
cats.
Had the cats. And it looked fucking unreal.
It's a great game, too.
I want to get into that, too. I can't believe that the idea of the space simulator game is basically dead. I know there are space sim games out there, like Elite Dangerous... And
why isn't it such a big genre?
I don't get it.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
It was such a fun.
I don't get it.
Part of our childhood.
I don't get it.
TIE Fighter.
I don't get TIE Fighter's another
fucking
one.
TIE Fighter.
That's not a full motion video game, but TIE Fighter was unfucking believable. I love that game.
Yeah.
And again, there was so many games of that genre to choose from in the 90s. The space simulator game. Where are they now? I know there are. I know they do exist, particularly on the PC. But back then, you almost needed a fucking joystick.
Yeah.
Because
we had to have a joystick.
You had to have a joystick because the joystick allowed you to play these games.
Yeah.
Like,
still very much that way.
It wasn't the Thrustmaster. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think Thrustmaster was one.
I don't know if that was what we had.
I can't remember.
We probably went to Kmart and got a shit one.
Yeah, probably.
But Dad probably took us down there while we were replacing Atari 2600 joysticks. But you basically wanted to have a joystick because all these games had 100%.
We had to have a joystick to play.
Yeah, exactly. And so Wing Commander 3, I love Wing Commander 4 as well, although I preferred 3.
3 was a better game. I think the cats being the bad guys
That's what I liked
was just
about
more
it.
fun.
Yeah, because by then, the war had ended when you got to 4. And this leads, I mean, here's a story. I know a bloke that got kicked out of a house because of Wing Commander.
Do tell. I think I know who this human must have been.
I spoke to him in the week about it, and he doesn't remember it. But I'm telling you, it's not the full reason, but it fucking contributed.
Please do tell.
Our mate Pedro.
Yep.
He'll
be on the show at some point.
At some point, and he'll defend himself. He'll go, "Fuck off! I never fucking did that. Fuck off!" But I'm telling you now, folks. There's a lot of truth to this.
There's a lot of stories.
So he was a late adopter to Wing Commander because I think I must have had it, and we were playing it on the 486DX
266. Yep.
And I loved everything about it because I really do enjoy those full motion video games, those FMVs. I know they're cheesy, but I liked them. And so that was like the best of both worlds because you got like full motion video
and a fantastic,
and you got a fucking awesome like flight simulator action arcade type of shooter game, all of that shit, and a great storyline too. And I remember telling Pedro this. I'm like, man, this is a great game. Check it out. And he might have come over for dinner one night, and he's like, yeah, this looks good. And he ended up getting a copy himself, and he played it. Now the story is that he was living with 2 girls that were a lot older than us. He'd moved out of home and he was living closer to where he worked, and his flatmates were these 2 older chicks. And I will defend him because I don't think they liked him that much. Right? And there was claims, I wasn't there to see it, that he wasn't pulling his weight with the housework.
And there may have been.
But given his track record, I fucking believe it.
Yeah, I believe that.
Right? Something like he wasn't doing the dishes or something. I kind of believe it.
Well, there's another story you need to
Well, I'll fucking get into it. Let's get into it. Yeah. Right. This is a bloke, when the Xbox 360 came out, he says to me, listen, I want to go all in. I want to go balls deep. And I said, all right, what do you want to do? He says, all right, I want to get a new TV. And I want to get a surround sound system because I want to talk about the 360 in detail at some point, not today. And I said, yeah, all right, cool, because the 360's got HD gaming and it's got 5.1 surround sound, so I'll hook you up. So we went down to a pretty big retailer shop, might have been Harvey Norman or something, I can't remember, Domain or some bullshit. And I said, how much you got to spend? He told me. I went, all right, cool. Hooked him up. Got into the... how long have we been recording, by the way?
It's all right, an hour and a bit. Keep going. Talk. No, you got to finish it now, mate.
All right, we'll wrap it up.
You got to finish the story.
I'll finish the story.
Yeah.
So anyway, I hooked him up at the retailer shop, and I said to him, all right, let's bring it home. I'll set the TV up for you. I'll set this surround sound system up for you, and we'll get the Xbox fired up. Because I was pretty excited for him to get on the Xbox. And he's like, okay, cool. And, mate, he went like fucking furious on this. Like, he ripped the TV out, threw the box to one side, ripped the surround sound system out of the box, put it to one side. There was shit fucking everywhere. Set it all up. I set it up with him. Started playing some Xbox 360 games back in the day, and I left him. Anyway, I went over there.
First mistake.
Yeah. Do I want to tell this story?
Yes.
So the next day I go over. So probably maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, I go over there, and I see where we left the TV box and the boxes for the surround sound system where we left. They were still there. I'm like, okay. And then I look on the table, and there's like a half-eaten chicken on the table with 2 plates. So I'm thinking,
he's had some company.
He's had a girl over here or something. Something's up. And I said to him, "Have you had company?" He says, "No." I go, "Well, what's with the half-eaten chicken carcass on your table?" He goes, "Oh, that's been there for 2 weeks." He goes, "I just haven't had time to remove it." Because I'll get in the fucking story now, right? Because this is a guy that would go home from work, because he worked a very high, I'll give credit where credit's due. He was working his ass off, and he had a very high level job, and he'd drive home, and he drove past the McDonald's. He'd drive through the drive-through of the McDonald's, pick up his food, eat while he was driving, get home, turn the Xbox 360 on, sit there and unloosen his tie, right? Play to about 3 or 4 in the morning, go to bed, wake up at fucking 6, put on a new business shirt. And I don't mean a new washed business shirt. I mean a fucking brand new out of the pack business shirt. You know the ones with the pins in them? You've gone to like Myer and you bought a business shirt.
So he's had to unpack it from the plastic. Fucking unravel it all.
Yep. I'll tell you how I know this, because I went to his house one day and had to go to the toilet. And I couldn't get into the toilet because there was a mountain of fucking shirts. And I said to him, "What's all this shit?" He goes, "Oh, they're my shirts." I go, "Don't you do the washing?" He goes, "No, I just wake up in the morning and put on a brand new shirt." So he put on a brand new shirt and he'd go to work his ring off, leave work, go through the McDonald's drive-through, pick up a fucking cheeseburger, I don't know what he was eating, come back, turn the Xbox 360 on, go to bed, do it all over again, right? This went on for fucking months. But that was the behaviour. But before this, many years before this, he was living with these 2 chicks. Anyway, they claim he wasn't pulling his weight.
You can see this sort of links together.
I can see the pattern, but I'll defend him.
There is a pattern. There's another story we'll talk about next time.
There is.
Yeah.
But I'll defend him. Because they kind of had it in for him as far as I'm concerned. They were a bit older than us. I think they wanted one of their flatmates to
they wanted him to fuck off.
They wanted him to
fuck off.
They weren't very nice to him. I'll defend him. But I also will put credit where I'll also put shit where shit needs to be thrown at, because he was playing a fuck ton of Wing Commander 3. And I know what he's like. When he's on a roll, he won't stop for fucking food.
It's a decent length game.
He won't stop for water. And I dare say he won't stop to clean the dishes.
Yeah.
Right? So I think this is what's fucking happened. And the girls that he was living with, I don't give a shit that you need to beat the Kilrathi. I'm sure it's very important, but so's the fucking dishes. Right? So he's probably... They got rid of him, but then his downfall and downward spiral really began when he moved out on his own. But that's another story. I won't get in that today. So the reality is, Wing Commander was an awesome game, and I really kind of want those games to come back. I know there are games on the PC. I've played a little bit of Elite, and there was another game that came out on the PC that I messed around with, but none of them are at that level of... Hollywood's behind it. Because remember the big thing with Wing Commander 4? They had on the back of the box real movie sets.
Yeah.
And they got was it Malcolm,
it was
Malcolm McDowell?
Yeah, Malcolm McDowell. It was a legitimate production.
It was a legit
with multiple paths that you could take.
It wasn't. It was the shit.
Back then, it came on like four DVDs.
It was the shit.
Yep.
And it was CD-ROMs.
CD-ROMs back then.
So I really, really want those games to come back. And with the technology that we have on Blu-ray,
phenomenal.
Come on, you can't tell me you can't do it. But we'll never see those games again. And I really, really want those full motion video games to come back. And I would argue that Bandersnatch, which is, I haven't seen it yet, but I know what it is.
You should give it a go. It's not horrible.
Yeah, I know what it is. But I would argue that a lot of those interactive type movies and those interactive type games, like I love the Quantic Dream. I know people throw shit at them, and some of it's deserved, but I really love Quantic Dream games like Heavy Rain.
Heavy Rain's a fantastic game.
I fucking love Heavy Rain. I really enjoyed Detroit Become Human. You should play that.
Haven't played it.
That's really good, and I really like the theme of it, the cyberpunk type of feel of it. It's not perfect by any stretch. There's some bullshit.
Mate, I'm yet to play a game in the last 2 or 3 years that is perfect.
Yeah, I know, but I mean it. For a Quantic Dream game, it was a very good return to form. But Heavy Rain's still my favourite Quantic Dream game. But those interactive type games, where Heavy Rain had on the back of the box, interactive movie, I would argue they came and they stem and are descended from those very early 90s full motion video games that did have some kind of choice, some kind of choose your own adventure type stuff. And I really want them back, because there are times when I go home and I don't want to play an intense first person shooter and be scared. Like fucking Resident Evil 2's come out, the remake. I want to play because I hear it's the shit.
Yeah, but fucking scary ass.
I can't do it, man. I fucking get scared.
The cat will fucking shit itself.
And the cat can't deal with it. The cat's had...
It watches everything
mate,
you do.
the cat's got fucking problems. I told you about the problems with the cat. He's overweight.
Oh, do tell.
Here's the fucking story. I took the cat to the vet. And I said to the vet, listen, I'm worried about the cat. I think he might have a urinary tract infection. And she says, well, what makes you say that? I said, well, when he goes to the kitty litter, he cries, he meows. And she said, well, I'll check to see what his bladder's like. So she's doing this. She's feeling him up. And the cat's looking at me going, what the fuck? Anyway, she says, no, his bladder's empty. And I go, yeah, that's because he's pissed all over you and all over the fucking table. Because she hadn't noticed when she's
doing that, he's pissed everywhere.
He's pissed everywhere, right? All over her. And she go, I didn't notice that. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. And then the best bit is the best bit. Can I say it? Yeah, let's say it.
Go nuts.
She says to me, he's overweight. He needs to lose at least a kilo. And he's only a 6 or 7 kilo cat.
It's a decent amount, right?
He's only a little baby, really.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay. And she says, yeah, it's good for his health. Now, here's the thing. I'm not saying I'm not svelte. And neither are you.
Far from it.
Right? So we really can't...
Rotund.
We can't throw stones.
I definitely can't throw stones.
Have you ever seen Shallow Hal?
I've seen Shallow Hal.
Okay,
of course,
okay, she's a beast. This chick's a beast. This vet.
Yep.
Nice person.
Lovely lady.
And she says to me, he needs to lose weight. Then she goes to make some notes on the computer and she sits in the chair. And here's the Shallow Hal moment. The fucking chair broke. You know when Gwyneth Paltrow sits on the chair and it breaks? Yeah. That's what happened to me in the vet office.
Oh, fuck.
And I'm like, you can't be telling me this. And I'm sitting there going, I'll give you the hot tip. The cat's the healthiest thing in this room. Between me and you, darling, the cat's the healthiest thing in the room. He's going to
outlive us all.
It'll outlive me by fucking 100 years and you, darling. Don't worry about the cat. So, where were we going with that shit?
I don't know.
I can't remember.
Scary games.
So the cat can't deal with the scariness, but that's the thing. I don't want to play intense games like Resident Evil all the time, as great as it apparently is as a remake. And so I really do enjoy the interact. And I'm glad Bandersnatch, I haven't done it yet, but I'm glad that it exists because I want more of that choose your own adventure in games. And that's why I love Quantic Dream games. The gameplay is minimalistic and people can throw stones at it, and that's fine. I don't disagree, but I do, going back to my point, those things I think originate from those very early 90s full motion video games.
Yeah.
And full motion video was showing off the hardware that was coming out at the time, and a lot of that hardware is never made it, man. The 3DO never made it. The Atari Jaguar never made it in cartridge or CD-ROM form.
One thing I'd like to talk about, not today, but in a future podcast, is why the Dreamcast never became what it should have become.
Oh, that's a big topic, man.
Right, that's a big topic.
Because the Dreamcast... Well, I'll say this about the Dreamcast. I think everybody that's ever experienced the Dreamcast or was around when the Dreamcast was a thing... It was ahead of its time.
It's a fantastic... to this day, it's a beast.
It's one of my favourite systems, but it was ahead of its time.
The controller was amazing.
I think the controller...
The Tamagotchi that you could stick...
You're talking about the VMU. I think the VMU's fantastic, but I think the controller was shit.
Yeah. It was a bit big and chunky. But
it's not a good controller.
Yeah.
But the VMU was ahead of its time. The VMU was fantastic. I still believe that a lot of Dreamcast games look better than PS2 games.
Oh, yeah.
And the PS2 was competing with the Dreamcast and vice versa. And I just think, very, very long story short on that, and I do want to go into detail on that another time, but we want to wrap this up. The storm cloud of the PS2 was always descending on the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast came out in 1999, and from the fucking moment the PS2 was a thing and rumors were circulating about, it's got this thing called the emotion engine.
And that's it.
The
marketing
that was bullshit.
Yeah,
the emotion
marketing.
engine was bullshit, right?
Yeah.
It was
There's nothing special.
it was just
no magic sauce.
It was just what they called the CPU they stuck in it.
There's nothing magical about it.
It wasn't that cool. And, the PS2, in a lot of ways, the jaggies that were present on the screen, it didn't look as good as Dreamcast.
Dreamcast was amazing.
Soul Calibur,
Mate,
which was a launch title.
Slammed.
Still, if you load up Soul Calibur
It still
today,
looks good.
it still looks the shit, right? And that's why the 90s is one of my favourite decades of gaming, because it started off with the cartridge games of the Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo,
and then turned into,
and then it ended with the Dreamcast.
Soul Calibur. Yeah,
fucking amazing. I don't think we'll ever see, and I don't think we have seen since then, the diversity of change
that
in
happened
games
in the 90s.
That happened in the 90s. You had full motion video as a thing. You had cartridge games at the early part of the decade as a thing, and you ended it off with the Dreamcast.
It's a big decade.
It's a big, and you had the PC as well, really kicking gear too, with Wing Commander and all the FPS games on the PC. You could go into that. You started.
And we will at some point.
I mean, we started the decade off playing Zeliard. We were talking about it early.
I was playing it before you got here.
Exactly. So Zeliard came out in '87 in Japan, but it was 1990 in the West here in this part of the world, and it was a PC as only game as far as I'm aware.
PC MS-DOS game.
Never got a remake. Should get a remake.
Oh, mate, I'd love to. I'd love to spend time doing it.
Bit of a Zelda clone.
Yep.
Bit of a Book of Ease or a Ease game. You've never played Ease, but I've got the.
I know the game. I know the series.
I've got the Book of Ease 1 and 2 on a TurboGrafx 16 that I bought from the US. Actually, a Turbo Duo. I bought a Turbo Duo, which has got the CD-ROM component. I had to buy that from the US because the TurboGrafx 16 was released very, very briefly here.
Yep.
It didn't take off. Whereas in North America, it
went off. Yeah.
It had a presence. Yeah. It had a presence. I don't think it ever really was the front runner of the console war at that time, but it had a presence. Here, it never had a presence really, and it never had a chance. And so we never got Ease, right? And so Zeliard was our Ease.
It's such a great game.
Right? Zeliard was our, I guess if you're a PC player, it was our Zelda.
We were playing that quite later on as well.
Yeah, 90.
Yeah.
We played it in 1990.
Yeah.
Because that's when it came out. And we played...
When did the song I'm Too Sexy for My Shirt
1992.
Because we were still playing Zeliard when that song came out.
I don't know where you fucking pulled this shit out of your ass.
No, man, because I remember listening...
What's your obsession with that shit?
No, because I remember it used to be like on the top hits on VH Hits or whatever that fucking show.
VH1.
Yeah, we used to watch that show on a Saturday.
What was it called? No, it wasn't VH1. It was Video Hits.
Video Hits, right?
Video Hits.
And that song used to always come on, and we would be playing Zelda.
Well, that was not Zelda. You mean Zeliard?
Zeliard, sorry.
Well, that was 1992, but I would argue we were playing that in 1990.
Yeah, we're still playing it
because that was one of the very first PC games that we played.
Oh, mate.
So here's the thing. So we had all those Sierra games.
Yep.
We talked about that last week. And on top of that, once we'd finished our obsession with Sierra games.
Well, they stopped making games.
But once we'd gotten our fill of them, because there were so many of them, we discovered Zeliard. And Zeliard was a very small game. I think it fitted on one 5.25 inch disc.
It's very small.
So it was less than 1.4 meg, I think.
It looks it.
Mate. Well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
It never had... This is the thing. It never had VGA support. It only supported EGA. So it only had 16 colours on screen at the time. And it never got a remake. No one fucking talks about it. There's a couple of nerds on YouTube that talk about it. And God bless them, because it's a fucking great game.
Yep.
And it's a game that I think really got hidden by Ease. So if you're in North
If anyone
America,
wants to remake it, by the way,
do it.
Hit us up. I'll put in some time into that.
How can you remake it?
I can code. That's what I do.
You're a fucking nerd.
I'll fucking remake
You're
the shit out of the
You're a
game.
bigger nerd than I am.
Unity, we'll do it in Unity. Anyone wants to do that, fucking bring it on.
Any of this shit.
Yep.
But it was a big game. Well, for us, it was a big game because, like I said, we didn't get to see Ease on a TurboGrafx 16 or a Duo, because I have since, like I said, imported the Book of Ease 1 and 2, and I've since played it on my Turbo Duo that I imported from the US, and I can understand why people talk about it, because if I transport myself back to those early 90s and played that game, fucking fuck.
It's a legit game.
Oh, it's the shit.
Yeah.
It really is the shit. And it is superior to Zeliard in a lot of ways. And it's also, too, if you were a kid that never had a Nintendo and you never played Zelda, it's your Zelda game that you never had, right? So I really would love to see a Zeliard come back. But it kind of got swamped as well because full motion video hit everything, man. It was a tidal wave. It was a tsunami. It hit.
Well, you got to do the comparison between Zeliard, which is 1990, to fucking Wing Commander.
You can't compare.
You cannot compare.
They're not even the same genre.
I mean, it looked retro back then.
It did,
right? It was very
well. You know what? Here's the thing. Because we had that VGA monitor. I really wanted to play games that supported VGA.
Yeah.
And because it didn't support VGA, what pulled me through that game was the gameplay.
Yeah.
Right? That's how good it was. Because other than that, any EGA game I saw, I went, oh, fuck this, it looks shit.
The gameplay was outstanding for its time.
But it was...
Mind you, we just tried to play it then.
I can't play it.
And it was running a little bit fast, and it was quite difficult.
Yeah. Did you get it from GOG?
Yeah, no, it's just, it wasn't GOG, it's Abandonware.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So it's totally free now.
Okay. But it's worth checking out if you've never played it.
If you've never played Zeliard, do yourself a favor. I'll put a link down on the YouTube. It is... For me, it's one of those games that I always remember from my childhood.
It had
that
all
being
elements.
said, I reckon we need to call time on this bad boy because I'm busting for a piss.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm wrapping it up. So we've covered a lot of topics today. We've probably bored everyone shitless. How long did we run for?
About an hour and a half.
We're done. Thank you for your patronage again, all two of you that have listened. This has been the Invert the Why podcast with me, Retro Dan, and Jason Relaxation. And I tell you what, next week we'll go down the mists of the retrodom again. I took you very, very far.
I reckon we focus
1979.
I reckon we focus on the Dreamcast next week. I'd be keen for that conversation.
I would too. Dreamcast it is. Until then, all two of you that are listening, thank you very much, and thank you, Mum, for sponsoring this and for making the fairy bread. God bless you all. We are out.
See you later.
Ciao.